تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربي
والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Sisters and brothers, we welcome you to the first night of 3 nights for the Arbaeen program by Sheikh Mahdi Hazari. And today's topic is, why do I always feel like I am patching up holes in myself? And before I begin, I'd like to mention that water has been donated on the pure soul of the marhumi Ikhlas Majid As-Saraf. If you can please recite a Fatiha for her, بعد الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Dua Kumayl, inshallah, will be right after the program at 10 o'clock p.m. So we please ask you to join us in dua. And the bookstore, which is across the hall to my left, will be open tonight until after dua. You can purchase books about basic beliefs of Shiaism.
الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا رسول الله وعلى أبي عبد الله الحسين يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة يا غريب يا مظلوم يا عطشان كربلاء. ما خاب والله من تمسك بكم، أمن من لجأ والتجأ إليكم. يا ليتنا فيا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هل ننبئكم بالأخسرين أعمالا الذين ضل سعيهم في الحياة الدنيا وهم يحسبون أنهم يحسنون صنعا. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. والسلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. My dear brothers and sisters, first of all, I want to thank you and I and Ali and Hajj Alex and the Islamic Center of America for having me back. I thought for sure after the last time, that's it, I would be blacklisted. But it is really my distinct honor and my privilege to be in one of the most favorite places for me and to be with some of the most beloved people. All of you, mashallah, are so blessed, and I feel it is just an honor and a privilege to be amongst all of you. So thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. On a Thursday night, after working today and traveling, and I know you have as well, and tomorrow is a work day. Don't want to take too much of your time, and want to keep it as simple as possible. Insan is meant to struggle. Human beings are meant to face difficulty. And if we really deep down search within ourselves and look at ourselves honestly in the mirror, if life is very easy, if life is just a joyride, then we are probably missing a very important component of what it means to be human. Because insan only learns from difficulty and challenge. And Karbala is an example of that. Yet the key is that in any difficulty that you experience, what is Allah's role in it for you? That's the question if we can answer. Because difficulty comes for various reasons. Difficulty can come because we are personally careless, because we've done something to harm ourselves, or difficulty and challenge in life, trial in life can come because Allah is testing us. And if Allah is testing us, then certainly we must ask ourselves, what role does Allah play in our life? And how is it that we have to change so that we can come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Now, if you look at insan, there are two aspects, and I said I will keep it as simple as possible, so I will. There are two aspects to consider, okay? There's one aspect that is a reflective aspect. There is another aspect that is automatic. I'll give you an example, okay? I'm from the deep south. I come from North Carolina. You would think that a Canadian boy who moved to North Carolina, you know, Canadian guy, will remain quite Canadian, but you know, the South, if you live in the South, here in Michigan, you don't know what it's like being in the South. The South has a culture to it, you know. So you move to the South and the culture of it rubs off on you. So I'm standing in front of a table. The table has kanafa on it, okay? And it has a pecan pie. I, knowing my own sensibilities, know what I want to pick. I will always go for the pecan pie, okay? And you guys can throw stuff at me, being people who love kanafa, right? Why? Because in my mind, I have already decided. I have come to a conclusion based on some form of thinking, and my decision is that this is what I want to pursue. This goes for anything, and I'm giving you a fairly trivial example, but this goes for anything in life. Anything that requires you to think and calculate and come to some conclusion is called reflective mechanism in the brain. It requires you to think. But there is another part of you that we don't actually think about, and that is the automatic aspect of your mind. Now, your mind has a very automatic aspect, one that you don't always realize. And I've been giving this example, and I give it mainly because I think it reflects something that is hidden within us. They did a study in the 50s, I believe. It was the 50s or the 60s here in the United States, in which they went to a university somewhere in the deep south where it was predominantly white students. They brought the students into a big auditorium, and they separated them into two groups of participants, and they asked them questions. And they asked them essentially two questions. One question was, should white people and black people be allowed to get married to each other? And should white people and black people allowed to co-congregate, meaning go to the same university, go to the same restaurant, etc.? Now what they did was, with one group of participants, they had the person who gave them the question be another white person. So somebody from the staff gives them the question, they're a white person asking them this question. In the other group of participants, they made sure that the person giving the study participants the question was a black person. Same question, same types of students, white students in a southern university somewhere, but the person giving them the question, one was black, one was white. The group of participants who received the question from a white experimenter, guess what they said? They said that white and black people should not get married to each other. The vast majority of them said, no, it's not a good idea. Whereas the rest of them, the other question, they said not only should they not get married to each other, they should not co-congregate. They should not be going to schools together. They should not be in the same society together, etc. The same types of students in the other group, when they were handed this question by a black person, guess what happened? They no longer said that as much. There were still some who did, but the numbers had decreased quite a bit. Why? Just by the fact that they were looking at a black person giving them this question. This is the automatic tendency that is inside of our mind. And it happens to all of us. If I were to stand in front of you today, okay, you see this face, I come in front of you wearing a three-piece suit, versus I come standing in front of you with tattered clothes, dust on my face, I'm sweating, what will your perception be of me? The three-piece suit versus the other image. Will it be the same? Maybe in some of your minds you know me quite well, it'll be the same. But for many of you, you may not know me. Your automatic mind will tell you what? That the guy in the three-piece suit is what? Successful, trustworthy, knowledgeable, intelligent, has a career, blah, 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 right? Whereas the other one is a failure. Look at him, he looks like a hoodlum. He's a bum off the street. He's useless. Stay away from him. That is the difference between automatic thinking and reflexive or reflected thinking. And the problem for us is that sometimes, even though our mind is telling to reflect and to think and to ponder, what happens? The automatic mind takes over. It reflexively takes over and stops you from pondering correctly, stops you from applying information correctly. Imagine how that would happen. Imagine the causes of that. So that's one aspect of insan. The other aspect of insan, my dear brothers and sisters, is the fact that we have an inside, an inner aspect to us and an outer aspect. Two different parts to us. And Quran, it talks about both, always. He says in the Holy Quran, وَأَصْبَغَ عَلَيْكُمْ نِعَمَهُ ظَاهِرَةً وَبَاطِنًا. Allah put His ni'mah on you, He showered you with His blessings, His grace, both outwardly and inwardly. That means there is something inside. So just like the automatic mind and the reflective mind, sometimes they don't sort of come together and work in tandem, one overts the other, what happens? Your inside is not the same as your outside. Your outside is not the same as your inside. They clash. And that's why you see insan struggles. It is always the case. If you ponder on your life in moments of struggle, in moments of difficulty, you will see it's one of these two things. It is what you think to be correct, what you calculate to be the right course, does not match with what some instinct inside of you that's telling you the opposite. Or something that is significant to you on the outside, your inside is telling you it's not significant. Or vice versa. No? This is insan. And what does that do to you? And when they asked me, they said, well, what are the titles of your majalis? I said, well, let me come up with the craziest thought in my mind, yeah? And that's why you see these, don't blame poor Ali or you and I. The titles are my fault, actually, the crazy titles. And I'll tell you, you want to know where I got it from? I'll tell you exactly where I got it from. I saw a picture, I think it was on Instagram, of a person with their car. They showed their back bumper of their car, and they had taken one of those industrial staplers and stapled the bumper back to the body of the car because the bumper had fallen off so many times. They had taped it together. And I looked at that and I said, that's what my soul feels like. It feels like it's constantly falling off and I'm constantly stapling it back together. Constantly putting tape to tie it back together. I'm punched full of holes. Punched completely full of holes. And that, my dear brothers and sisters, is unfortunately the nature of insan. If you believe that you will go through this life without incurring that sort of stress on yourself, and when I say stress, I don't mean stress on your physical body. I mean on your inside, on your spiritual self. If you go through life thinking that it won't happen to you, then you are missing one of the biggest components of being a mu'min. Biggest components of rising. And that's why, what does the Holy Quran say? إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ خُلِقَ هَلُوعًا إِذَا مَسَّهُ الشَّرُّ what? جَزُوعًا وَإِذَا مَسَّهُ الْخَيْرُ مَنُوعًا. The ayahs are very simple. Insan has been created halu'a. Halu'a means what? Restless, impatient. Why are we impatient? Because something inside us doesn't fit. Something is missing, isn't it? Something is missing. And Allah is saying that, look, when evil befalls them, they become bewildered. They become bewildered. And if good comes upon them, they prevent others from the goodness. Insan is being taught that this is your nature. You're going to constantly rise, you're going to constantly fall. You're going to constantly rise and you're going to constantly fall. Now the question is, why? Why? The legacy of Karbala, the legacy of Imam Hussein bi Abi wa Ummi is an example of that. It's an explanation, it is an exposition of this very nature. My dear brothers and sisters, look at the two groups of people who were in the time of Imam Hussein. And I think to myself, I hope I'm not in one of these two groups. One are the people who deny what is real. One are the people who either actively or out of ignorance have denied the truth. The other group are those who know the truth, but their hearts have gone to sleep. They know what is the haqq, they know who is the person of authority, but they purposefully have decided to turn a blind eye to it. The first is the group in Sham, in Damascus, deniers of the truth, whether purposefully, consciously, or out of ignorance. The other are the people of Hijaz, the people who knew who Rasulullah is, who Ahl al-Bayt are, who Imam Hussein is, but yet when he calls that come with me, only some come, and at the end of the day, when they're standing there on the day of Ashura, 72 are left. How is it that in a world where now Islam has spread everywhere, it has spread into North Africa, it has spread all the way into the lower steppes of Asia, it has moved beyond into Persia, beyond Persia also. And yet Imam Hussein, the grandson of Rasulullah, has 72 men standing next to him, saying, Ala hal min nasirin yansuruna, hal min dhabbin yadhibbu an harami Rasulillah. Is there anyone to support us? If anything indicates the brokenness of insan, it's this. And I am not saying that in a bad way. I am not saying that insan is broken such that they are flawed, that God has made us flawed. No, God has not made us flawed. God has made this perfect insan. We are flawed because we break and we don't try to fix ourselves. We incur damage and stress on ourselves and we don't know how to repair that. And again, I am not speaking physically, I am talking spiritually. When al-Hawra al-Aqila Zainab al-Kubra alayha salatu was-salam, salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. When they brought them into Kufa, I want you just to imagine, these men who stood against Imam Hussein on the day of Ashura, they are the same men who sent letters to Imam Hussein saying, come, we will support you. Yet when they saw that the tides had turned on the battlefield, their faces also turned. So when the prisoners were brought into Kufa, they say the men, some of them began to cry. They saw the state of the prisoners, these women being brought in with their hands tied, the aghlal, the chains around their necks, one to the other tied. Some of the men began to weep. They say, Al-Hawra al-Aqila Zainab al-Kubra, she stood up. And it's reported that what did she say to them? She said to them, how dare you weep and cry now? She says, do you know which piece of Muhammad's body, his heart, you have broken? Do you know which pledge to the family of Prophet Muhammad you have violated? She said, you have committed such a crime by which the mountains will break, the skies will collapse. And then you know what she says? She says, مَثَلُكُمْ كَمَثَلْ الَّتِي نَقَطَتْ غَزْلَهَا مِنْ بَعْدِ قُوَّةٍ أَنْكَاثًا. This phrase that she says has so much meaning. Because the verse of the Quran, what does it say? Which is what she is quoting. It says, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّتِي نَقَضَتْ غَزْلَهَا مِنْ بَعْدِ قُوَّةٍ أَنْكَاثًا. Don't be like the one who ties her yarn and makes it strong and then unloosens it. So let's go back to that example of the pecan pie, no? Who wants pecan pie tonight? I'm going to say it so many times that everyone's going to be like, let's have pecan pie tonight. No? No. It's only me. I'm the only crazy one here. Let's say I want to get healthy and I'm going to the gym, I'm running, I'm doing some plyometrics, I lift weights, I run, I'm doing it 4 or 5 days a week. Let's say I do it 5 days a week, but 7 days a week, I eat a quarter piece of pecan pie. Any good in that exercise? Well, maybe there is marginal good in that exercise, but what have I done? I have essentially nullified that good act. I have taken something that's beneficial to me and effectively said, I'm going to destroy it. I'm going to light a match under it and I'm going to burn it to the ground. And the same example is given here. That's Al-Hawra Al-Aqila Zainab. What does she say? She says, you people, your example is like the one who comes, she ties the rope real tight, she makes the yarn and she fastens it and tightens it, and then herself she comes and unloosens it herself. We do this. We do this all the time. We do things for our own good, and not only do we do things for our own good, but then we destroy it, unfortunately, whether partially or entirely. And I am saying to you that this bears just a little bit of attention. That when you do a good act, ensure that the next thing you do after it is another good act. Make for absolute sure that if you do a good deed, do not allow the very next deed to be a bad act. Ensure it. Make sure. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you with something, gives you something good in your life, ensure that the minute after that you have gotten that goodness from God, that you go and do something good. Because you know why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one day they say that, he quotes in the ayah as well, but the man, he comes, it's reported, asks Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, that Yabna Rasulillah, how is it that the people who sin, Allah deals with them? Those who are vehemently and adamantly in their sin. They want to sin, they don't care. Imam, he says to them, he says to the companion, Allah, whenever they do a sin, whenever they commit a sin, Allah opens the door of goodness for them, meaning He gives them whatever they want. They commit a sin, so Allah makes them happy by giving them something. This is called istidraj. He opens the door for them. Why? Now because they become happy. They don't even realize the sin that they have committed. That's why I say to you that if you have done a good deed, you have finished your salat, get up and give $5 of sadaqah immediately. You have finished your salat, make sure you don't gossip right after that. You have finished your day of fast, don't go at the end of the night and do something haram. Wal-'ayadhu billah. If God has blessed you and given you a job, God has opened up a door for you in some way, shape, or form, ensure that after that ni'mah is given to you, you do not follow it up with a sin. Because that's what creates a hole inside of you. It creates a deficiency inside of you. And the bigger that hole becomes, the more it becomes difficult for you to come out. So that's one thing. We unravel our goodness, our good deeds by doing bad deeds. We take our good actions and we negate them. We violate them and we destroy their value in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second thing is called a goal gradient. All right, so I'm going to tell you guys about a goal gradient by giving you an example. How many people have run a 5K race? And you Dearbornites are really lazy. What is this? Only one hand? Oh, Rami's got his hand up. Yalla, Rami. 2 people have run a 5K race. Ya Allah. Man, I'm going to have to come here and we're going to have to do a race. Yes? We'll do a 5K fundraiser, inshallah, for the Aitam of Lebanon and Iraq, and inshallah, 5K race. So let me tell you, when I was young, 19 years old, okay, I still remember this. My friends come to me and they're like, look, we're gonna run a 5K. I'm like, when's this happening? They're like, in 2 days. Now, mind you, I haven't been running. I haven't been doing any cardio to prepare. They're like, tomorrow, we're gonna go out and train. Who trains the day before you run a 5K race? That's craziness. But being 19 and being really stupid, you know, I was like, okay, come on, I can do anything. I'm young, I'm capable. So we go and train, yeah? We train real hard. The next day the race comes. You know, those of you who are athletes, right before the sport starts, right? What happens to you? Your adrenaline starts to go? No? Just before you initiate something that you want to do, something that you have some zeal to finish, some goal you want to achieve, in the beginning, what happens? You got lots of adrenaline, you've got lots of energy, you've got lots of desire to complete it. You're there, so you're ready at the start. The gun goes off, boom, you run. And man, that first mile, you go as hard as you can because you see everyone else is going hard, right? You're going as hard as you can. What you don't realize is 3.6 miles, not that short when it comes to a fast race. And there are guys who've been training for over a year on this. So you go running as fast as you can. By the time you hit 1.25 miles, suddenly the legs start to give out a little bit. No? You haven't trained properly. You haven't prepared. That adrenaline that was there in the beginning, it starts to wane a little bit. So now you hit middle of the run, you slow down. Now I remember myself, they clocked me. I was doing about a 6.5 minute mile for about the first mile. That's pretty good, no? 6.5 minute mile? That's wicked fast. I get to the second part, I slowed down significantly. I'm getting to what I assume is about the end. I couldn't remember because I hadn't trained, and I'm really struggling. I mean, this is Florida heat. I'm struggling. I'm barely making it up this little hill at the end, and I don't know who decided to put a hill at the end of a run on top of it, but it's always like that. The most important things you want to achieve, the hill is right at the end of the run. So I'm trying to get up this hill. I'm gonna get to my point, don't worry, I'm gonna get to my point. And I'm struggling. This older guy comes running up behind me, and he starts to pass me, and he looks at me really nicely, you know, he's like, come on, buddy, you got it. He's like encouraging me. He's like, come on, buddy, you got it. And I'm looking at this old guy, I'm like, man, if he's gonna pass me up, that's no good. He's like, finish line is just over that hill, you're almost there. Man, something lit inside of me. I started flying. I felt bad because he was encouraging me. I blew right past him. I was gone. And I get past that finish line, and I make it past the finish line, and I'm running and feeling happy, and I blow out my hamstring, and it was over, you know? So why am I telling you all of this? Because there is something in insan called the goal gradient. All right, look this up. Goal gradient means that in the beginning, when you want to achieve something, what do? You have lots of zeal, lots of fervor, lots of excitement, lots of energy to do it, right? Your energy level's up here. But by the time you get to the middle of it, if it is a task that requires a long period of time to achieve, what happens to you? Your energy, your attention, your zeal tends to come down, no? And when is it that your attention and your zeal and your energy and your drive suddenly shoots back up? It's when you see the finish line, right? When you're close to graduating college, what happens? You see you're close. You're ready to finish. So you give it everything so you can finish. You push that last little bit. This is called a goal gradient. All right? So people have asked the question, why doesn't this high level of motivation, this energy, persist throughout? It's because we can't see the end. It's because we don't see our target sometimes. Now I ask you, how many of you see your death? How many of you visualize your own death? For those of you who have done it, obviously I speak to the men, go down into the grave. When you bury someone, in my job I do it a lot, unfortunately. But there is a lesson in it that when they dig that hole that is 6 feet deep and you go down into it and place the body with your own hands into that ground, and then you look up and you see those 4 walls that are suddenly going to be sealed around you, you suddenly see your own finality. And when you can visualize that finality, what happens to you? Suddenly you go home and what? Oh, I'm not only going to do all 17 rak'ah, but all the 34 extra that I have to do, I'm going to do them too, no? And I'm going to do it for a week. But then what happens? After a week, I have forgotten that hole that I was in just a week ago. My zeal goes down. What does that create inside of you? A hole. Why? Because your inside is telling you that you had a goal. You saw your goal, you saw your finish, but your outside is saying, no, the food is there, the house is there, your life is there, your children are there, you're going to stay here for a long time, you don't have to worry about that, that's far away. That disconnect of not seeing your goal causes discord inside of us. That discord, finally, the last thing, let me mention this to you, that what happens? That it is the struggle from inside to outside. And what have I done essentially? I have taken the value of that feeling that is there in front of me when I was inside the grave, burying the person, and I have compared it to the value of something else. Okay? Like what? Like the life of this world, like my house, like my bed, like my car, like the fact that I don't have to worry about where my next meal is coming from. And when I have compared one value to another, I'm going to obviously pick what? The one that has immediate effect for me. The one that is tangible to me. And that's why the biggest thing for us, my dear brothers and sisters, that causes deficiency inside of us is the fact that our inner self is seeking one thing and our outer self is seeking another. Unless we have absolutely destroyed the feeling of spirituality that is inside of us. Let me give you an example. They say one day a man, he describes, it's reported, that I was leaving Medina and I wanted to go visit my master Abul Hassan, Ali ibn Musa al-Rida alayhim as-salam. Salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. He said, I was coming to him, I was thinking to myself that I have 2 daughters, I want them to get married, but I need some help. I'm going to die one day, and how blessed would it be that I could be buried in a piece of garment that was given to me by my Imam. He reports, he says, I came, I saw Abul Hassan, he greeted me, he talked to me, he brought me in, we sat down. He said, just looking at him and the state in which he was and what was being done to him, meaning the persecution of the Banu Abbas, he said, I began to cry and weep. And the pain of looking at my master, the pain of looking at my Imam and his suffering made me forget about my needs, such that the whole day went by, I forgot about what I was thinking when I came in. And as I am leaving, I'm walking away, he calls to me. He says to me, have you not forgotten anything? I turned around not realizing, the man, he says, I turned around not realizing what he was talking about. He says, do you not want to take my shirt? The companion, he says, Yabna Rasulillah, for what? Imam Rida, he says, so you can be buried in it. Take the shirt. He says, in addition, come and look under this mat where you were sitting. He says, I came and I looked, there were 2 pouches. When I opened the pouches, there was money inside. Exactly the amount of money for each of my daughters to get married that I had been pondering about before I came to see him. And as I left, I took those with me. Now I ask you, those things that this companion received from Imam Rida alayhi salatu wassalam, is there material value to it? Yes, maybe the money for the daughters to get married, but the shirt? Even Fatima bint Asad, the mother of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wassalam, it's reported that when she was dying, when she was about to be placed in the grave, Rasulullah had come to her. And she said that, Ya Rasulullah, I am anxious about going to that next world. Will you not bury me in your shirt? Cover me in your shirt? And bury me so that I can feel that contentment? Now again, I ask you, obviously he is Rasul, his shirt has meaning, but I'm saying from a physical perspective, that material has any meaning? It could be the shirt of anybody else. Would it have the same meaning? It will not have the same meaning. It has meaning because the spiritual side of you feels some value for it. And no matter, you can give that person 3,000 shirts that are more valuable, better quality, highly stitched, etc. Will they compare to that one shirt that is given to you by your master? It will not compare. Because that one shirt has interior value to you, intrinsic value. When the intrinsic value and the extrinsic value don't match, or when they collide, when they are discordant, it creates a hole inside of you. It's because we have given value to something on the outside that outweighs the value of something that you have on the inside. This is something we have to consider very deeply. That what we're doing in life, yes, no one is saying that you should live like a pauper, that you should go up in a cave and live on, no one's saying that. And we will talk about that tomorrow, inshallah, to some degree. But understand that valuation from the outside versus valuation from the inside are two different things. And that they should match. To some degree, they should at least match. Because when they don't match, you find yourself struggling to give significance to what you have. Doesn't matter if you live in a mansion, doesn't matter if you drive a Bentley, doesn't matter if you go to Paris every year for vacation, it will have no meaning. Because the interior is not getting what it considers to be valuable. And that requires vision, my dear brothers and sisters. It requires us to see the world around us. It's reported that Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, he used to describe his great uncle, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. And we cannot have a majlis of al-Hussein without mentioning the name Abbas. He would say, he described him. And even Imam Sajjad, it's reported Imam Sajjad, he would say, no more difficult day came on Rasulullah than the day of Uhud. Why? Because Asadullah and Asad al-Rasul, Hamza ibn Abd al-Muttalib, was shaheed on that day. And he says the day of Karbala, the day of Ashura, was difficult on Imam Hussein, particularly because of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas's loss. And that's why Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, when he describes his uncle, he describes him in two ways. Two ways, my dear brothers and sisters. He said that my uncle Abbas is nafidhul basira wa sulb al-iman. Two things, so beautifully described by our Imam. Nafidhul basira, it means he saw where he was going, exactly where he was going to end up, and he fulfilled the path that took him to that end. And he did so without any doubt as to what was required to get there. When you say nafidhul basira, it means you know where you are going and that there is no doubt in getting there. We false prey to the world because we are doubtful. Because what we have on the outside does not match the inside and vice versa. Because our drive to achieve our goals is inconsistent. Because we do good and we unravel that good moment to moment, moment to moment, in the smallest of ways without realizing. The second thing, sulb al-iman, not only did he have a persistent end to his goal, but his iman was so strong that it would never crumble. His iman would never falter. That's what allowed him to do what he did in Karbala. And that's why on the day of Ashura, and we are here to commemorate those days, we are here to remember these individuals, my dear brothers and sisters. Who was by the side of Al-Imam Abi Abdullah al-Hussein? That when the forces were gathering on the day of Ashura in front, the forces of Umar ibn Sa'ad, they say the dust was kicking up from the sands of Karbala. Imam Hussein alayhi salam was kneeling on the ground of Karbala. They say his hand was on his scabbard. Leaning on his scabbard, he had fallen asleep. And as the enemy was gathering, he was sleeping, he fell asleep, a hand woke him up. Some say it was Al-Hawra Al-Aqila Zainab, others say it was Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, who said, Ya Sayyidi, Ya Aba Abdullah, wake. Imam Hussein opens his eyes. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, he says, the enemy has come. Imam Hussein, he says, I had fallen asleep and I had seen my grandfather, Rasulullah, telling me, very soon, Ya Hussein, you will be with us. The same Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, he takes permission from Imam Hussein. And Imam Hussein, he says, go Ya Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, go Abbas, go first to the Mashra'a, go to the river. Go bring water for the thirsty children. These are people, these are individuals who they know where they are going. Their example is of those who do good, and upon good they do more good. They sacrifice and sacrifice and sacrifice for the sake of good. He gets on his horse, he reaches the water. When he gets to the water, he comes down, he alights from his horse. He takes the water in his hand, and as he is bringing the water to his mouth, he says, Ishlon ashrab wa akhuya Hussein atshan wa sikna wal haram rid'an والله قلب العليل التهب نيران رمى الماء من كفه وتحسر. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, raising the water to his mouth, remembers the thirst of Ruqayya bint al-Hussein, remembers the thirst of Abdullah al-Radi', remembers the thirst of the ladies of Ahl al-Bayt. That's why, my dear brothers and sisters, when you quench your thirst on the hottest of days, say, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Fadatka arwahuna Sayyidi. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas remembered the thirst of his brother al-Hussein. He threw the water back in the river, filled up the water skin, climbed on his horse and began to return to the tents. The enemy soldiers attacked him from every side, attacking him with their arrows and their spears. فهجم عليه لعين فضربه على يده اليمنى فقطعها. One attacked him from the right side, striking him on his right arm and severed it. Another attacked from the left side, striking the left arm and severing it from the body. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas carrying the qarba, carrying the water skin in his mouth, still charging back to the tents. He must reach the tents with the water. But now the spears have been thrown. A spear strikes him in his chest. He begins to fall from the horse, now calling out, Assalamu alayka ya Sayyidi ya Aba Abdullah. Alayka minni akhar as-salam. My last salam upon you, my master, Ya Hussein. Falling to the ground, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas opens his eyes. He is worried, he is anxious. All he cares about is where is the water skin. His goal was to bring the water skin to the His goal was to bring the water skin to the children, to the thirsty of Karbala. But he sees that the arrow has pierced into the water skin, and the water has seeped into the ground of Karbala. Imam Hussein runs rushing to the body of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. فوقع عليه أبا عبد الله وقال الآن انكسر ظهري وقلت حيلتي وشمت بي عدوي. Now my back has broken, my support has gone, Ya Abu Fadl. Everything has gone. Imam Hussein, he holds the head of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas and he puts it in his lap. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas drops his head back to the ground of Karbala. Imam Hussein, he picks up the head and places it again on his lap. Again, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas drops his head to the ground. One more time, Imam Hussein, last moment of the life of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, wants to hold the head in his lap. But Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas drops his head to the ground of Karbala. Imam Hussein, he says, Ya Abu Fadl, Ya Abbas, my brother, why do you not allow me to hold your head in my lap? It is your last few breaths in your life. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas opens his eyes. He says, Ya Sayyidi, Ya Aba Abdullah, if you hold my head in your lap in my dying moments when I am leaving this world, then who is going to hold your head, Ya Aba Abdullah? Maybe he knew that Shimr is sitting there on the chest of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. My dear brothers and sisters, weeks go by and the news reaches Medina. The prisoners have been released. They come outside of Medina and stop. Imam Sajjad, he calls Bishr ibn Jadlam. He says to him, go into Medina, announce what has been happened in Karbala. Tell them, the people, what has happened. Bishr ibn Jadlam, he goes into Medina and climbs the minaret, announces to the people, and the Rawi, he says, it is as if Israfil had blown the trumpet of the day of judgment. All the people came out into the streets. When Bishr ibn Jadlam went down from the minaret, one old lady, she came to him. She says to him, Ya Bishr mal khabar. What is the news, O Bishr? What did you just announce? Bishr, he looks at the old lady and he says to her, عظم الله لك الأجر بولدك جعفر. Oh lady, may Allah increase your reward for your son Ja'far. She says to him, ما سألتك عن جعفر. He says to her, عظم الله لك الأجر بولدك عثمان. Allah reward you for what your son Uthman has achieved. She says to him, ما سألتك عن عثمان. Again, then he says to her, إذن عظم الله لك الأجر بولدك عبد الله. Allah reward you for what your son Abdullah has achieved, what he has done in Karbala. She says to him, ما سألتك عن عبد الله. I'm not asking you about him. Finally, he says to her, عظم الله لك الأجر بولدك أبا الفضل العباس. May Allah reward you, O lady, for what your son Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas has sacrificed in Karbala. She looks at him and she says to him finally, ما سألتك عن ولدي أبا الفضل العباس ولكن أسألك عن سيدي ومولاي أبا عبد الله. I am not asking you about my son Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. I only want to know about my master al-Hussein. أيوة حسين. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأجل الأكرم يا الله. اللهم إنا نسألك وندعوك ونقسم عليك بحق الزهراء وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها والسر المستودع فيها، لعن الله ظالميها. اللهم شافي كل مريض، اللهم رد كل غريب، اللهم فك كل أسير، اللهم غير سوء حالنا بحسن حالك يا كريم. اللهم وفقنا لمراضيك وجنبنا معاصيك وثبت أقدامنا على صراطك المستقيم، وخذ بأيدينا إليك يا أرحم الراحمين، وفرج عنا يا الله فرجا عاجلا قريبا كلمح البصر وهو أقرب من ذلك، وافرغ علينا صبرا وتوفنا مسلمين. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.